Hey guys, on this episode of SAMP&CHANCE Boxing, we have a treat for you. We are sitting down with the one and only Ishe Smith, famed from the Contender, the first man born in Vegas to be a world champion. We're going to sit down with him. We're going to listen to his stories. He's going to tell us about what he's been saying in the public recently. So, guys, you don't want to miss this. SAMP&CHANCE out. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of SAMP&CHANCE. I am your host, Bobby Sampson, joined as always with me, my man in the master plan, Mr. Chance Michaels, and right below us, ladies and gentlemen, first Vegas born world champion, Ishe Sugar Shay Smith. Ishe, thank you so much, brother, for coming on to the show. Thank you. Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Can't complain. It's been a good day. I woke up this morning, so that's always a good thing. So I can't
Absolutely.
complain at all.
Fantastic. Ishe, let's just get right into it, brother man. You're born in Vegas. How did boxing find you or did you find boxing?
It was a combination of both because I was kind of I was kind of little for my age. I was 8 years old when I started. I was being bullied in school, and my family friend was a trainer at the time, going to a local gym called Golden Gloves, and started in my my bedroom, teaching me how to throw punches, and then from there we went to the gym, and from there just started loving it. Wasn't too in love with the sport when I was young because I wanted to be a kid and play with my friends, and boxing is a year-round sport, so wasn't too in love with it. But I think when I got my first fight and a couple fights after, I fell in love with the game, and I started seeing people in the gym, that I would see on TV, like Mike Tyson and Azuma Nelson and Gerald McCullough and Terry Norris, and just so many great heavyweights coming through, Riddick Bowe. Just so many great champions at the gym at that time coming to train. So it allowed me to even practice my craft more and want to be better. And then as I started getting older and getting better, those same champions would tell me, one day you're going to be champ, you're going to be this. So that was kind of motivating for a kid, 9, 10 years old at the time. So yeah, just like I said, it found me, and yeah, I didn't like it at first, but it stuck with me, and I ended up loving it.
The boxing never let you go. Yeah, you had an amazing amateur career, 117. I mean, that's a great record there. How were the amateurs for you?
It was good. I've competed in the '96 Olympic trials.
Yeah.
I was the youngest there. I lost in the semifinals to Zab Judah by 4 points. Very close fight. Um, I had a good career. I set myself up to compete in for the Olympic trials to make the Olympic team, and I think that's every amateur boxer's dream to at least put yourself in the position. And I was one fight away from really positioning myself from making that Olympic team. So it was nothing to cry over. I had a good amateur career. Won some tournaments, lost some tournaments, and overall I had a good experience.
Awesome.
How did you get your nickname? Did somebody give that to you, or tell us a story about that?
Oh, when I started off pro, I kind of took a break from boxing after '96. Kind of just wanted to be a kid because all my dedication had went into the sport, from the time I was 8 until 17. So a dream of mine was to make the Olympics. So when that didn't happen, just kind of wanted to be a kid and hang with my friends, which I did for a couple years. And then in 2000, I started back boxing, and maybe no, '98, I started back boxing. And in 2000, I was one of the favorites, because I had already went to the '96 Olympic trials, and I had only moved up one weight class from the '96 class. So I think my region and my gym had a lot of high hopes for me to possibly make it to the Olympics. But I after '96, I just didn't have the drive anymore for the Olympic program, and I had watched so many guys do so well. Fernando Vargas, Zab Judah, Floyd Mayweather, all those great 96 Olympic teammates, David Reed, all
Hmm.
those, 96 teammates of mine go on to be world champions and have good careers, even though professional careers. And I didn't even try for the 2000 Olympic trials or really compete in that many tournaments. So I was like, it's just time to turn pro. So I actually turned pro before the trials, before the Olympics. I had positioned myself to turn pro, and I was just some people have a hard time, saying my name. They see it, they want to call me Ishi, and I have to keep constantly telling them. So I was just gonna call myself Shay, and I was working with this guy, Donald House, and he was partners with Kenny Adams, and Kenny Adams was my first professional coach. And he said, "What's your name going to be?" And I was just like, "Shay." I was like, "I'm just gonna call myself Shay because people have a hard time, saying my name." And he was like, "No, man, you're gonna change the game. You're gonna be different. You're gonna really be a good fighter. I think you should call yourself Sugar Shay." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, Ishe Sugar Shay Smith. That's what you should call yourself." So that's kind of where it started. So I can't take credit for it. Donald House, who actually is a cut man. He was a cut man and a boxing trainer for many years, and now he's a permanent cut man and guy for the UFC. If you see the UFC and you see a cut man in the corner a lot, you'll see Donald. He's on that UFC circuit, and he still works with fighters as well.
Right
Yep.
on, right on. So you turned pro in July of 2000. At that point, what's the process like turning pro from that level? Like, how do you have what do you have to go through to make that happen and kind of start?
Well, I think boxing's not hard to turn pro. I mean,
Okay.
with my background, it really wasn't hard because I had already accomplished almost everything you can accomplish at the amateur, ranks. I had, competed at the highest level. I had fought Demarcus Chop Chop Corley in the amateurs and beat him. Fought Hector Camacho Jr. a couple times, lost some very controversial decisions to him. So I had, practically so for me, it wasn't that hard to turn pro, but it's not really hard to turn. Boxing is probably the only sport where it's really not that hard to get a professional license and do all that. You pretty much go in and sign up. I mean, I wouldn't, obviously I wouldn't do that if it's I wouldn't do that if it was just an average Joe coming off the streets. But I've heard stories of people doing just that,
Right.
getting the license, not having no amateur background, no professional background, and just getting in the ring and fight. So it's not that, it's not like where you need this extensive background, like, so they say like basketball or football or something like that. It's not hard to turn professional in this sport at all.
Right on, right on. Um, if you don't mind, I'd like to just bring this up if we can. In doing research for this interview with you, I discovered that you had come to a low point in your career in about 2010, and you were having some unsavory thoughts and things like that. But you were able to turn around because you were going to focus on your children and the family. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that and what you did to change that attitude so other people who may be facing similar scenarios in their life presently could take something positive from that to work with?
Well, at the time, after the contender, I was looking for the right promotional team, the right promoter, and because they didn't, they were great. They were a great platform to give me the fans and the recognition that I needed at that time in my career. But I was a little bit more advanced than all the fighters there. And it's unfortunate that I end up losing a split decision to the eventual winner, Sergio.
Yeah.
But yeah. So after that show, I was looking for different, see what avenue I was going to go. I ended up settling, agreeing with Golden Boy. They came and I had a great couple fights with them, and went and fought Suku Pao, which wasn't, you know, I was into the fight, but I had a lot of stuff going on outside the ring at that time. A lot of people say I won. They thought I still won the fight, but I ended up losing a very close decision.
Mhm.
And, you know, after that fight, they released me, which was, you know, it was just crazy to me because I had just had a kid. I think I had one child on the way at that time, or maybe it was my third child. I can't remember. And then my life was just starting to spiral out of control. I started having financial problems, and then, you know, man, my wife at the time, who I had been with since I was 18, you know, she filed for divorce. So I was just kind of just having this rocky time, and I just like felt like, you know, I was, you know, and then not being with my kids every day because I was like I grew up without a father, so I knew how that was.
Right.
So not being with my kids like every single day, not putting them to bed, waking up with them and stuff really took its toll on me. And I'm sleeping in this condominium by myself. So it was really rough. And I was like, man, I was just thinking to myself, I'd rather be dead than alive. And I would, you know, I was getting a gun and I was going to end it. And then I was just, you know, it's just something, you know, it had to be, I'm not even gonna say something was God, man, because, you know, I'm very believe in my Christian beliefs, and, you know, I just was thinking about my kids and how, you know, it was going to be selfish for them to leave them without a father because they were all still young. Like my youngest was like 5 at the time, or 6. He was young, and my oldest and my youngest was probably like 1, or she hadn't even turned 1 yet. So, you know, I was able to get myself out of that place looking at my kids, and putting myself stepping outside of my body and realizing, you know, it was just a selfish act for me to do. And fortunately, I was able to get myself out of that situation by God's will, and I was able to still be alive to this day and still raising my kids to this day. So, you know, anybody that's going through that, I would encourage them to call the suicide hotlines. I think it's 1-800 gets help something suicide. But anybody that's going through that, I would encourage them to get the help that they need because it's an everyday battle. You know, when you're dealing with your mental health and stuff like that. You know, I definitely had some issues in my life where I had some, you know, some mental health issues, but I was able to persevere and overcome those.
That's amazing. I'm glad you're here today. I mean, just looking at your Instagram, you have you know, your son's playing football and
Mhm.
whatnot. So, you know, there's a lot of good stuff there, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
I'd like to ask about the Contender series. I noticed that they gave you you were roommates with your former adversary Alfonso Gomez. How did you feel when they did that to you on the show?
Oh, man, you know, I wanted Alfonso. Actually, you know, I requested him because I felt like I knew him more than anybody in the house at that time. I knew Sergio as well. I had sparred him, and I think I had competed in one amateur tournament with him. But I wanted to room with Alfonso
Okay.
because I just felt like he was the underdog. Me and him had already fought. It was a very close fight, you know, but I was able to pull it out. But I wanted to room with him, and we just kind of connected when we went and tried out and all of that. But it was a great experience, man. I wouldn't trade that
Yeah.
experience, you know, definitely wouldn't trade that experience in for anything. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, and me and those guys are forever linked, and it was just great to be a part of that show.
It was a great show. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, a boxing reality show. It's kind of weird to see how they would kind of put it together. So how long before like when you look at like Tough Enough and stuff, all those fights happen within the first 2 weeks of everyone being there. Is that the same format in here? Is this like you're constantly cutting weight, or how do they do this?
No, I think for us, it was a little longer. We filmed a little longer than that because I think it was a fight like every 3 days.
Okay.
But you got to remember, it was 16 fighters. So it was 16 fighters. I do remember that. And I do remember, I think it was a fight every 3 days. So the first round was what, 8 fights.
Mhm.
So just right there alone, that's like 20 some odd days that we filmed. So it was a little bit more long, a little bit more tiring. I think guys, you know, were getting a little restless, having to be up under each other. You know, guys you potentially got to fight. I was fortunate because I think I fought third, so I was the third fight. So I was very fortunate to get my fight out of the way, and I was able to relax a little bit. And but yeah, it was a little restless, but it's still, even having a fight already and still be in that house up under the guys that you have to fight, it was just very mentally draining. It was a
The House of
very
Alphas.
mentally, yeah, it was a very mentally draining experience, but at the same time, it was a very good experience. Like I wouldn't trade it for the world, but it was very, especially because we were all so young as well. You know, I was young. All of us were so young at that time. I was, I don't think I had lost a fight yet. I went to that show undefeated. So it was just, yeah, mentally, it was a whole different ball game.
Now,
I
in
got one more
hindsight,
question for you there. What was your experience like fighting in Canada when I first noticed you in Richmond in 2008 against Joel Julio?
That was one of them things where, man, I fought that fight, and then
I
like
thought you
I
won the
don't,
fight. I thought he had the first half. I
yeah,
thought came on at the end. I
that
was surprised.
exactly. I was about to say that, man. That's just
Yeah,
one of those fights where I knew I was coming in as the B side. I thought I did enough to win, but being the B side, of course, you're not gonna always get the decision. But that's just one of those fights, man. When I look back over my career, that I was like, ugh, that fight was close, and it's just like, but when you're on the B side, I had a great time. The fans were great over there. Everybody treated me good. I wish I could have fought in Canada more than once during my career, but that was just one of those fights where I thought could have went either way, but definitely thought I could have possibly won.
I thought you did, but
now your thoughts on Vancouver. I don't know, did you have enough opportunity to check out the city, or what did you think of Vancouver?
No, man, I really that fight was what 16 years ago, so
yeah,
nah, not much. I just remember being ready for the fight. I remember the people treating me well. The fans were great.
yeah.
And a lot of fans came up to me after the fight saying they thought I won, but yeah, I didn't really have a lot of time to check it out, but I did have a great time while I was there before the fight, and the fans after the fight was great.
Cool.
Fantastic. And then in 2013, you finally got your shot and you won IBF junior middleweight champion of the world, man. How was that?
Oh, that was the best experience in the world, man. Because I think as every fighter, you wanna either fight for a title or put
Yeah.
yourself in a position to win. So I was very fortunate to get a second chance at my career through all the ups and downs and roller coasters. Because people just don't realize I was like on that path early in my career before I went to the Contender. I had beat Randall Bailey, who was I think when I fought him, a two-time world champion, and still knocking a lot of people out. And I had just positioned myself well to get a title shot then. And then I went on the show, and then all the ups and downs throughout my career, then dealt with the suicide. So it kind of just all came to head that night, and all put it together, and it was great. I won that fight, and I was happy as the greatest day, one of the greatest day, if not the greatest days of my life. So it was a very good time, man, for me and my family.
Awesome, awesome. Now, at that time, did you find it surprising when you found out, or did you ever find out that you were the first Vegas-born world champion, considering that's Fight City, fight capital of the world?
I had knew for the longest, ever since I was a kid, that had been something that I found out when I was maybe a teenager, that
Okay.
Vegas had never had a world champion, and I had always had it in the back of my head to be the first, even with like against my peers, because some of my peers, they had won so many tournaments and they were so great. Like Augie Sanchez was probably the best amateur in Las Vegas in Nevada history. He had won so many tournaments. He had done so many things, and he went to the '96 Olympic trials. He had beat Floyd in trials, but then he lost to him two times in the box off. So I mean, he had set the standard high for just the amateur class, and he was a stablemate of mine. So knew that. So I basically was trying to rush beat him to it, and he started his professional career before me, and then he fought Nassim Hamed, and I think he dropped him, but they called it a slip. But then Nassim ended up stopping him later in the fight. But he had a pretty good amateur career and pro career. But I had knew it, and I think overall I was just looking at him. Me and him was just like I felt like I was racing him to get it done, and when his career ended and mine kept going. And then I had the ups and downs. Like I said, it was great to finally be able to do it. It really was.
Awesome, awesome.
How does your body feel after a long career like this? You have any aches and pains or any injuries? How are you feeling today?
No, because I feel great because I didn't let the game retire me. I retired from the game. And my last fight, when I was getting ready for, my last three fights were all tough fights. I fought Julian Williams,
Hmm.
then I fought the other kid out of Michigan, who's a trainer now. Can't think of his name. The other kid out of Detroit, Tony Harrison. I
Tony
fought
Harrison, yeah.
him. Yeah, and then I fought Erickson Lubin, who's a up and coming, still a great fighter at 154.
Yep.
So those three opponents alone, I think were exactly my last three fights in those order. And you can very well dispute the Julian Williams fight. A lot of people to this day still think I won that fight. And
Yeah.
then the Harrison fight was close. He may have
Split
edged it
decision.
out. Yeah, he may have edged it out, but Lubin, I knew like I didn't have a lot left that Lubin fight because I was I was struggling with guys in training, and guys that I would back in my younger days I would mop the floor with them. I would just like Paul Wolak type guys and those type of guys. And I'm just like, dude, I should not be struggling with guys like these. I'm getting hit way too much. And I was always known for a pretty solid defense. And I'm just like, bro, this is just so I was already having my doubts going into the fight. But when you have when you set up a camp and you got to pay people, you got your team ready, and then of course you dedicated some money to the camp as well, so you trying to reimburse what you already spent. So of course I was just praying I got out of that fight, like I'm able to get out of it okay, and that I'm able to win it. But I knew it was going to be tough in my mind. I knew because I was just struggling in camp. That was probably like the worst camp I've ever had in my career because, like I said, it didn't feel like my timing was off. I was getting hit too much in the gym, and I was just like, bro. And once I lost, and people say, oh, you got stopped. No, I got up. Like I got dropped. I think like a couple times. I got up. I was walking back to my corner, and the ref stopped it. Like I got stopped standing on my feet, walking to the corner, not staggering or not getting caught out. The ref, I think the ref knew who I was, and he had already probably ref a couple of my fights, or he had known who I was, and he was like, "You say I ain't letting you do this. I ain't letting you go out like this." So he stopped the fight, and I'm glad he did because our fighters, we're our own worst enemy. I would have just kept going out there. So I was glad I was able to retire from the game and not have the game retire from me. So I have no health issues, nothing wrong with me whatsoever.
Were you about 40 years old at your last fight? 39, 40, something like that?
Yeah, I think I was I may have been 40. It was 2019. So I think I was 40 because I'll
Okay.
be 46 this year. So I may have been getting ready to turn 41.
Awesome, awesome. So Ishe, if it's cool with you, brother man, a lot has been coming out. You've been kind of active on the social media, on the X and whatnot. And I've just noticed that there's a lot of people talking about your comments in regards to Floyd and Charlo, Aiden Ross, all these kind of guys. Um, I'd love to offer you this time here right now to kind of tell us a little bit about that so we can clear this up because I mean, I haven't really seen you have the opportunity to really talk about it, opposed to people just dissecting your tweets and things like that. What's going on over there? What happened?
With Floyd,
Yeah, well, yeah, in general.
well, I mean, well, I've been knowing Floyd uh since I was I want to say 9, 10 years old.
Okay.
We've been knowing each other for a very long time. We came up through the amateurs together. He's a tremendous fighter, a Hall of Famer. Um, he he is one of the reasons, if not the reason, I got my title shot. So I'll be all forever indebted for that.
Mhm.
Always grateful for that opportunity. But you know, what he did then, I always tell people it's like being with a woman for 20 years and you have a great 20-year marriage, and then in the 19th year you find out she cheated on you and stole a whole bunch of money from you, does that erase, the other years? And you say, oh, forget it, you did that, it doesn't matter because you gave me, 19 good years. And in the 20th year, I found this all out, but I'm still going to divorce you. No, it doesn't. You still did me dirty. So it is what it is. So we have a very peculiar relationship. I have a lot of respect for the guy, but I didn't like the way, some things happened towards the end of the career, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm not gonna. I have my own feelings, and I think the people on the inside, the people that were there, know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll leave it at that. And it is what it is. But I'm never gonna talk about it publicly because it is what it is. But everybody who knows, anybody on the inside who know what they know exactly how I feel, and they know exactly that it's the truth. So, and I'll leave it at that.
When is the last time you talked to Floyd?
Oh man, shit. It's probably been 2017, 2018.
Okay.
I hadn't even talked to him. The last couple fights I had with them, I wasn't communicating with him. So,
Okay.
it's just as a promoter, when you say you're gonna do things, do it. You know what I'm saying? That's my bottom line. If I do deliver my job and I do the things I'm supposed to do what you're supposed to do. And that's all I have to say. It's like when you sign an NFL contract, right? And you have those bonuses in your contract, and it says if you reach this amount in yards as a receiver, if you reach this round yards, you get this escalator. If you reach that amount of receptions, you get this escalator in bonuses. So as the same as a fighter, if you come to me and tell me, well, if you beat fighter A, if you're gonna fight fighter A for this amount, you're gonna fight fighter B for that amount. If you beat fighter A, even though it's a lesser amount, you're gonna get a title shot after. If you fight fighter B, you're gonna make more, but there's no title shot attached to fighter B. So of course, any fighter is going to take fighter A, even for the lesser money, because if you beat fighter A, you got a title shot attached to it. So, and that's what I'm saying. It's just like when stuff like that happened throughout my career, I'm not going to publicly dish you or anything, but I am going to say what's on my mind, and that's that. Everybody doesn't have to know the inside business, but you know what it is, and I know what it is, and I'll just leave it at that.
Are you okay with the public's critique of this whole thing? Do you feel like?
Oh, I'm totally fine with it because they don't know. They have no idea. So they're not. They only know what I want them to know.
Right.
So you can guesstimate. You can say what it is. You can you can preach anything, but who never comes and says anything? Any fighters that was attached or anybody that was involved with the whole situation during that time. And there's a lot of people, so none of them ever come and say I'm lying or I'm detached or I'm delusional or anything. So it's always just fans, and fans think they know everything. Fans actually think they negotiate contracts and they know percentiles and they know splits and they know all that. So that never bothers me whatsoever.
Fair enough. And just one last thing on it. I'm not to dig or anything, but why now?
Oh, because it's like that because it'll always be like that because it never got settled.
Okay.
When it's like that and you never have closure, what I'm saying? A lot of people say they have the saying, well, so and so is living in his head rent free, or she's living in his head rent free. But the thing is about it, bro, it's not about living in somebody's head rent free. It's like always feeling like that. It's like the wife that cheated on you and took your money. It's never gonna be cool. So it ain't never gonna be cool because it's never gonna be settled. So it is what it is. When you start breaking promises to people and you start going on the record shitting on the same people you made the promises to, you start doing interviews like that, That's never going to be cool in my book. So,
Sure.
and I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
I got a question for you. Who were some of your favorite fighters growing up as a kid and a teenager that inspired you to keep pushing forward in boxing?
Oh man, Sugar Ray Robinson for sure, because I watched a lot of old film on him. A lot of old VHS tapes on him. Joe Louis, watched a lot of tapes on him. But the ones that I followed was like that was actively boxing. I watched a lot of De La Hoya, watched a lot of Sweet Pea, watched a lot of Azuma Nelson, was very fond of him as well because he was in my gym training during that time. Um, so all those old guys, Jeff and Roger Mayweather too, they trained at my gym, so it was kind of good seeing them coming up and actually training in the gym. So I always was very fond because those guys were like on the local club scene in Vegas for a while, so it was always cool seeing them at the gyms training and then going to either watch their fights on TV and stuff like that. So that was all cool to see them at the gym, and Terry Norris too. Seeing so much of him in the gym in Vegas having camp, and then having to go and watch him on TV. Frankie Randall was another one that spent a lot of camps out here. Gerald McCullen, he spent a lot of camps in Vegas, so I was able to see a lot of him firsthand. And Felix Trinidad, he spent a lot of camp. A lot of Don King fighters spent a lot of time out here at my gym, Golden Gloves gym. So it was always great seeing those guys. And I can't tell you the many different years I've seen Felix Trinidad just in camp
Wow.
and just watching his sparring, because these guys didn't close the gyms down and didn't. The only person that closed the gyms down and would kind of keep the gym to itself from a certain time was Mike Tyson. But all those other guys had like the gym you would be training at the same time as them. So as a young kid, when you see those guys training in the gym and you're training right alongside of them, and then you see them on TV, was a big inspiration. And that's where Trinidad was Trinidad before any of those guys were big like that. So it was always good to kind of follow their blueprint and how they do things and how they train and conduct themselves as professionals.
Cool.
And speaking of Mike Tyson, do you have any thoughts on his current return to the ring?
He's 57 years old. He's soon to be 50,
He'll be
58.
58 by that time.
Yeah, be 58 years old. He smokes a pound of weed a day. I mean, he's probably old enough for Medicaid and AARP. When are we going to stop looking at this guy like he is the young killer we all was accustomed to loving? I mean, I don't. Father Time in boxing doesn't wait for nobody. And just as I told you guys earlier, when I was that age, when I was in my 40s, my last fight, 2019, the fucking punches hurt. They hurt. They didn't. I was no more invincible, and that was just in sparring. That
Yeah.
wasn't even let alone in the fight. So we are supposed to believe that a 58-year-old, 57, almost 60-year-old man is going to listen. Get your money, and I'm all for that. But it's time that this stuff stops, man. It's just I don't think he beats Jake Paul unless he catches him. He's 50, he's 58, be 58 by the time the fight happens, 57 now. He had dedication issues with the sport all the way when he was on top of the world. So we're supposed to believe he's dedicated now. I don't see that. I don't get what we're doing here. The guy, look, get your money. I'm more happy. Do what you do, but it's gonna take more than you don't. There's no running videos. There's no jump rope videos. There's no sparring videos. No bag videos. No sit up videos. The only videos is him hitting the pads for 30 seconds and then saying some clip at the end, some catchphrase at the end. So, like I said, more power to you, man. But if he had dedication issues when he was on top of the world, what do you think he's going to have right now when he's a 57-year-old man?
What are your thoughts on Manny Pacquiao possibly fighting Conor Ben in Saudi Arabia? He's 46, same age as you. He is dedicated. What do you think of that?
No, I think he should. I think Manning should be in a better position where he's not having to take fights like that. He's taken a. He's been through a. His body has been through enough. Like, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
I'm not the one to tell a fighter what they can and can't do. Like, if you feel like you can go out there and do it, by all means do it. But when does it become a point that enough is enough? And the guy's been through this tremendous wars, and he's been through so many fights. And I mean, what is he gonna be remembered as? You taking fights like this late in your career. It's not like you've been active. Like when Bernard was still fighting when he was older, he was still active. He was fighting like a couple times a year, 2, 3 times a year. He was still fighting.
Mhm.
And when is the last time Manny Pacquiao has fought? We haven't seen this guy in years. So all of a sudden you come back and you fight Conor. I'm all for fighters making money, man, but Manny shouldn't be in a position where he needs to fight to make money. All the money he made in his career, he should not be in a position where he needs to fight and he needs to make any type of money.
Do you feel that boxing right now is kind of getting into a really exciting period again, where people are really excited about boxing again, and there's a lot of talk about it? Your perception on the current boxing scene and all the fights that are actually being made now?
Uh, well, I don't know if we're getting. I mean, you got Fury and Usyk,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's giving us all the fight. I mean, it is, but it isn't.
Okay.
I mean, Canelo isn't supposed to be fighting. Canelo should be fighting Benavidez. That's the fight that should be made. Nobody wants to see him fight the other
Munguia.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody wants to see that. Especially when Benavidez was going to take short money. I mean, Canelo's earned the right to pick and choose, right? But he's on that fine line because now it's that line of where, why don't you want to fight this guy? Why aren't you making the biggest fight possible in boxing? Why are you giving us? And you say, look, if you want to fight Munguia and call it a career, or fight him and maybe one more fight, I'm all with that. But when you go and you tell us, and I'm a Canelo fan, like, I love Canelo. I think he has choosing the right to fight who he wants to fight. I think he's fought a lot of people. I think he's done that. I think he's been solid for the game. I think he's been A1. So I'm not one of those critics that think he's scared. But when you start toting a very fine line when you tell people you're going to fight 5 more years, and you're fighting guys like Munguia at this time, and it doesn't look like Benavidez is in the plans whatsoever. So you got to kind of pick and choose. I have no interest in the Munguia fight. I think he's going to beat the hell out of him. I have no interest in that fight whatsoever. It does nothing, really nothing for him. He doesn't have a lot of opponents as is. So to not even consider fighting Benavidez at this time is bad, or even consider doing a legacy fight in Benavidez, or a fantasy super fight which hardly happens in boxing, with Terrence Crawford willing to move up. Not considering those fights is tough, but there's a lot of fights happening. But there's still, I mean, when you have a YouTuber still able to make 25, 30 million, 40, 50, 60, million per fight, boxing is still in a very fragile state, man, and this is all because of not giving the fans what they want for so many years. This is all because of that. Now you have Showtime. Showtime has gone out of business, just like HBO, all product of not giving the fans what they want. So when you don't make the biggest fights possible, and you keep crying about crossing the street, this street, that street, and this person lives on that street, and you're not making the fights, this is a direct impact of fights not getting made and networks closing. This all has to do with that.
On that note, if you don't mind me asking, being having the inside track on all these kind of things, how much do the networks, like for example, Showtime was with PBC, how much did Showtime actually put towards purses? How much does the Zone put towards Golden Boy and Matchroom and things like that in terms of the purses for the fights? Or does that even come
I
from the
used,
networks?
I used to know this. I used to be so entwined into knowing this, but now with the streaming and everything that's going on now with these companies, I don't know as much as I used to know. I used to know exactly
But from your
how
time,
much.
meaning, from your
Yeah, I
time,
used
well,
to.
how did it work?
Well, back in my time, I remember ESPN used to give the main event like 15, like the main event would make like a certain amount. Let's just say the main event was 30,000. You know, one guy would get 15, other guy would get 15, and then the whole show may be like 60, 70, 80,000, something like that, and they would split it like that. Then you have your medicals and all that kind of stuff, but then you got the sponsorships on the kickback and stuff like that. I used to know exactly how this thing works.
Okay.
But I think now everything is so different is because the purses are so inflated. You have so many fighters like Ryan Garcia is making so much money. Devin Haney's making so much money, and rightfully so because he's answered the call of everything that everybody asked him. You have Tank, Javante Davis making so much money, but he's a high ticket seller. He's a showstopper, so people come out. But even those showstoppers, even non-showstoppers, are making a lot of money. They're making seven figures. And that didn't used to happen in my era. You didn't have guys making seven figures. Seven figures were going to like the top guys. I mean, they offered Floyd, I think, when he first rejected the HBO wages and called it slave wages. I think it was like 1 point something per fight or some shit crazy like that. And that was back then, and that was considered high. We all considered that a good wage. So now, when you look at it, you just when you look at it, it's just like these guys are making a shitload of money for fighting less. They're fighting less and they're making more money. When I know what it was on Showbox, I know exactly what I got paid for Randall Bailey, and I was one of the hottest prospects at that time. It was probably the biggest fight on Showbox at that time. That little as Showbox had been, they called me the Showbox Kids because I was fighting so much on that show, and I know exactly what I was offered and what I made for being on that, for fighting Randall Bailey, and it was nowhere close. It was nowhere remotely close to what these guys are making today. So, it's a lot of sweat and tears that went on to the Teddy Reeds and those guys who fought on Tuesday night fights and USA Network and ESPN Wednesday night fights during the summer, at the Playboy Mansion and
Mhm.
Friday night fights. There's a lot of open doors paved the way for these guys to make this money today. So you would hope they would make the biggest fight possible, but they still don't. And that's why we're in this Jake Paul era where he can come in and make more money than anyone that's fighting right now. Like he's like making Canelo type money. And that is fucking crazy. That
Fair
is absolutely insane.
fair enough.
Who are some of your favorite boxing commentators that called your fights over the years? Do you have any favorites like Jim Lampley or Colonel Bob or anybody like that?
I love Colonel Bob. Rest in peace. I
Yeah.
loved him. I love Steve Farhood because he was always fair. He was always a nice friend of mine outside of boxing. But he was fair when I fought. He called it as it is. I did love Jim. I think maybe called maybe a couple. I only fought on HBO maybe once or twice, but I did love a lot of those guys. I love ESPN. ESPN commentators was cool, but I had a good relationship with the guys at Showtime. I had been on Showtime so many times throughout my career. Just even on Showbox, I had fought on that network like 4 or 5 times, and then I started fighting on Showtime. So definitely those guys, but the Colonel was the best. The guy that also passed away, he was the judge on HBO.
Millions?
Letterman. He was great.
Harold
Letterman.
Letterman. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
awesome.
he was awesome. He was awesome. So I had a good time with those guys.
Cool.
Awesome, awesome. So you know what, we're gonna probably try to wrap it up here a little bit. Thank you so much for taking out the time for being here with us today. But before we go, a couple of things. We like to do this thing with all our guests. Chance will rapid fire some names at you and just give us your instant reaction. Is that cool?
That's cool.
Awesome.
Miguel Cotto,
Ah, legend.
Zab Judah,
Man, there's so many thoughts coming in. I'm trying to think of one. Underappreciated.
Reddick Bowe,
Ah, could have been the best ever. You know, I would say could have been greater, man. He was great though, but I think Bo had everything to be one of the best heavyweights to ever live.
Irish Mickey Ward,
Oh man, warrior.
and last one, Lennox Lewis.
Top 5 heavyweights of all time, easily.
Fair
Thank you
enough.
so much.
So,
Oh, we appreciate it.
oh,
Awesome.
thank you guys.
Go. What is your message to the world?
You don't. I would say to my true boxing fans, don't take the Jake Paul serious. He's not a boxer. He's not. He's not none of those things. He's an entertainer, and entertainers get paid to entertain. You can't get mad. He's not fighting the real fighters. He's just fighting MMA guys. He's fighting boxers that haven't boxed in years. He's an entertainer, and this is where we're at with boxing, and this is all direct impact of not giving the fans the best fight over the years, which has allowed this clown stuff to be going on. So if you just realize that he's not a boxer and he's an entertainer, you will learn to just respect what he's doing and appreciate him making money and giving other fighters opportunities.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Shay, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your honesty and your just openness and willingness to talk. We wish you the best, and please
Thank you so much.
you come back on again and talk boxing and let us, share some of your thoughts on what's going on maybe one day soon.
Okay, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Take care.
You too.